How many of you are missing this loud sound when you get on stage? I could see a lot of hands, smiles, but at the same time, each one of us is missing those emotions, those feelings, even if it is only for 5 seconds. Now, what make it even trickier is when you are cracking jokes or creating humor. It becomes far more difficult because at times you can't see people, at times you can't recognize their feedback, and you don't know whether your joke worked or not. So in the next 30-35 minutes, what we are going to do is two simple things. Number one, how to enhance delivering humor on a virtual platform. And second, when all of you get out of this workshop, each one of you should have at least one of your original joke that you can use it in your next virtual meeting or a workshop. So let's get started with it. To me, there are essentially two different components or two important components to it. Number one is delivery and number two is the content. Now, when you look at delivery, there are three ways I think that can enhance your delivery on an online platform, specifically when you are giving or producing a joke or humor. Background score, images, and using advanced softwares. Now, as a Toastmasters, we always want to learn from examples. So let's try a few examples. Background scores. In the past, I always believed I had magnetic personality. Despite that, not a single girl in India was attracted towards me for years. Lately, I read a medical research report stating 30% of women in India are suffering from anemia. And only then I understood, because all these years, these girls were suffering from anemia, a disease caused due to deficiency of iron. They are not attracted towards magnetic personality. So you see, the background score can give you a feeling at the end of the joke as if you are sitting in a physical setup. The next idea that I have is using images. Recently, I figured out the value of my self-esteem is far less than the value of my internet connection. Last week, my boss was shouting at me, and he was not only shouting, he was abusing me, but I was okay. But as soon as the internet connectivity is lost, I was frustrated because when my boss was shouting at me, I was watching Netflix. Now, if you look at it, in a physical setup, people might have trouble viewing your images. People might have trouble seeing the screen because there is light coming on from other direction, but on a virtual platform, it enhances your ability to create and crack jokes. And the third item or the third way on the delivery side is using advanced softwares. So at the moment, I have only explored two, OBS Studio and Minicam, and I will also give a glimpse at the end how to use Minicam when you are delivering a presentation or humor. This allows you to run multiple images, videos side by side based on the requirement of the joke or humor you have. Now moving from delivery to content. For content, I believe there are three ways or three quick ways in which you can build the content. Number one is the classic way of setup and punchline. Number two is using metaphors and comparison. And number three is creating questions. Let's look at setup and punchline. Now, if I give you a simple setup, like my wife is an excellent housekeeper, what comes to your mind? Can some of you put that in the chat window? What comes to your mind when I give this simple setup? And this is not my joke. I just took it to explain you how simple jokes work in a setup and a punchline fashion. Okay, so I'm already getting some responses. People are saying that I have a good wife. She is caring. Now, if you look at it, I have depicted an image in the mind of the audience just by using one single statement. Now, here is the joke. My wife is an excellent housekeeper. After divorce, she kept the house. Now, the punchline is very well crafted in a fashion that turns around your initial assumption of all the goodness you have thought about my wife. And also, if you look at the choice of word, if I would have chosen excellent homemaker, that would not have made the same impact because kept and house is used again in the punchline. The next idea or thought is using metaphors or comparison. I'm sure most of you are either aware of Toastmasters or no Toastmasters, and each one of us is facing this COVID-19 situation. So I thought, let's make a joke out of it, comparing and using metaphor. Toastmasters is like COVID-19. It has global reach. Toastmasters International. It is infectious. It can only be transferred from one human to another. The first club in your area is like getting first positive case in your geography. And to have community spread, you need to have at least 20 members. Usually, when these speech infected people come together, they call it a Toastmasters meeting. Prepared speaker is someone who has shown speech disorder in the last few days and undergo test usually for 5 to 7 minutes. A timer is like a quarantine period. Most of the speakers survive, but few having excessive speaking disorder die out because of black. Now, if you look at it, rather than introducing Toastmaster to a club in a very theoretical way, you can connect it with the recent advancement why we have gone virtual on all the platforms. Another thought that I have is using questions. Now, this is quite interesting because most of the time people say, I have bad internet connectivity. Now, how I want to formulate is, I would give this question to the audience. What is common between internet connectivity and sound sleep? Any guesses? In the chat? So, both internet connectivity and sound sleep, both of them doesn't come to me when I need them the most. Sound sleep a day before this event and internet connectivity on the day of this event. Now, this is also one way to give your audience an idea that there is bad internet connectivity in your area or in your place, rather than saying, I'm extremely sorry, I'm having bad internet connectivity. I will take a pause, maybe for a few minutes, and ask Agnes if there are any questions. I can take it for a few minutes.
Thank you, Abhishek. For the moment, there are no questions, but maybe now that you are ready to answer the questions, they will come. So please type in the chat any questions you have or comments, maybe. I read in the chat that people liked your metaphor, which is funny and witty. It's a good one that TM is infectious. And speaking about the problem you have, even if it's in a funny way, makes you feel relaxed and less stressed. Any tips how we can make up or think about a good metaphor? So do you have any suggestions how to craft good metaphors?
Now, if you look at metaphors and questions, metaphors need to be created first and their descriptions later. So I know Toastmasters International, in terms of crafting a metaphor or comparison, I just need to pick up the key element of both sides. So for example, I know Toastmasters International has a global reach. It is in multiple nations. It has a usual meeting. There is a timer, a prepared speaker, a table topic master. Now, in a corona crisis, we are using the term like infection, symptoms, like quarantine period, social distancing. I just need to match them in a fashion that they'll appear as if one is built for someone, for the other one. And that's the whole idea of making a metaphor. The other idea of question is usually you prepare the answer first. So I thought of what happens in a normal workshop for me. What are the two things that I desperately needed and I didn't get most of the time? So one is internet connectivity and the second one is sound sleep. And then once I have the answer, I transformed it into a question to give it to the audience.
Thank you. Another question, in fact, I combined two questions about how to prepare and being appropriate for internationally diverse audiences, and how do you deal with cultural differences when it comes to jokes or using humor?
Okay, so if I give you one of my joke that I used in Germany, that is specifically for the audience when I'm talking more in Germany. So here it goes. In life, sometimes we are helpless. For instance, traffic jam is prevalent across the globe. But when it happens in India, it's because of huge number of people. And in Germany, because of huge number of cars. Even though each one of us knows the root cause of the problem. We are helpless because Germans will not stop producing cars and we Indians, babies. Now if you look at this joke, worked extremely well here in Germany because I'm an Indian and I'm talking from the context of German audience. But when I am giving a joke to a wider global audience, it's important to understand not to bring these kind of joke, but more generic one, which can be your self-depreciating joke as I did at the beginning with magnetic personality, or that is more that now people are facing on a day-to-day basis. But you need to make sure that people understand the context when you are giving a joke to them.
And another question related to the joke is how do you manage the fear of a joke being a flop? And I would add, and how do you manage if there is no laughter coming or there is no good audience response?
So things have changed dramatically in this virtual platform. Still, how I do it now, experimentation with my jokes, is I record the jokes in a gallery view when I'm giving a speech in a Toastmasters meeting. And then at the end, once I have the recording, I see at which place people laughed, at which place I thought people might laugh, but there was no laugh. So you can get the responses, but now the way of getting responses has slightly changed. And the other part, or the second part, is you need to remember one thing: 90% of jokes fail, which essentially means you have to keep experimenting and see which one works for you. Because it will never happen that you create a joke and people start laughing at the first time.
Super. Thank you very much, Abhishek. Several participants, Dorleta and Shanta, would love to hear more about the software or the softwares you mentioned. Maybe you can deal with it now or later.
I will take it at later point in time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, then I always feel that a good workshop changes my mind, but a great one changes my action. So it's time for all of you, and here I request Bill to send instruction sheet to all the participants in the chat window. You will have 5 minutes. You can discuss in a group of 4. The idea is to prepare 1 or 2 jokes that you can use it in your next online meeting. So for example, everyone faces internet connectivity issue. What is your thought internet connectivity is like? And then give a punchline or an explanation to it. Social distancing, all of us having that emotional trauma against social distancing, what it is like. Virtual background sometimes works, sometimes people look really funny. What's the joke or the funny element you can bring in, and try to discuss. And as I said, most of the jokes fail. So even when you are discussing within your teams, it might happen that some of you will get a very good response in the first place, and some of you want to change a bit. And once you are back, I will request 1 or 2 representatives from 1 or 2 teams based on the timing to share their jokes, and the remaining can put that in the chat window. So now, Bill, I request you to send all the participants in the breakout area. So I hope you had fun. So who is the first volunteer that wanted to give his or her joke? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
We actually we produced 2 jokes, and one is a little bit spicy, but our workshop is about spicing our online speeches. So I will do both. Internet connection is like a beer. When you keep drinking beer, you don't notice it, but then it stops. You immediately start asking, "Well, where is my beer?" And second, which is a little bit spicy, what is the common between masks and condoms? 3 things: you protect yourself, you protect others, and we still have to persuade people to wear them.
Excellent. Excellent, Mike. So who wanted to try? Okay, go ahead, Sam.
I have one. Social distancing is like paying your taxes. Nobody wants to do it. People get really upset when other people don't do it.
So one of the things that people asked is how to use the softwares. Yeah? So one of the things that you can use, say in Minicam, is use this software, and then it can bring in the images, the PowerPoint together. Yeah? And then you need to somehow collaborate it with your joke. And sometimes it become really difficult for me as well, but I'm also trying out. But this definitely brings your joke to the next level.
Okay.
So what we have talked about? We talked about 2 different components. One is delivery and the other is content. On the delivery side, you can use background score, images, softwares like I'm doing right now. And on the content, you can make use of setup and punchline, metaphors, comparison, and obviously questions. Now, people usually ask how important is the pause? Voice modulation, facial expression, body movement, all of them are the basis of it. And for them, you always need them whether in a physical setup or in a virtual setup. And the same goes for content. You need to personalize the content based on the audience. You need to give words that can visualize, give a visualization effect. You need to dramatize your content in order to bring jokes, and you need to humanize it well at some point in time so that people get connected with it. I hope all of you had the fun and the laughter, and all of us together made sure that we have not wasted this day, because in the words of Charlie Chaplin, a day without laughter is a day wasted. And I hope all of you will bring more smiles around you. Over to you, Agnes.